For the last few weeks, God has been putting this scripture on me. It's Ezekiel 7. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says to the land of Israel. The end has come upon the four corners of the land. The end is now upon you, and I will unleash my anger against you. I will judge you according to your conduct and repay you for all your detestable practices. I will not look on you with pity. I will not spare you. I will surely repay you for your conduct and for your detestable practices, the detestable practices among you. Then you will know that I am the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Disaster, unheard of disaster. See, it comes, the end is come, the end is come. It has roused itself against you. See, it comes. Doom has come upon you who dwell in the land. The time has come, the day is near. There is panic, not joy on the mountains. I am about to pour out my wrath on you and spend my anger against you. I will judge you according to your conduct and repay you for all your detestable practices. I will not look on you with pity. I will not spare you. I will repay you for your conduct and for the detestable practices among you. Then you will know that it is I, the Lord, who strikes you. See the day, see it comes. Doom has burst forth, the rod is budded, arrogance has blossomed. Violence has arisen, a rod to punish the wicked. None of the people will be left, none of that crowd, none of their wealth, nothing of value. The time has come, the day has arrived. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller grieve. For my wrath is on the whole crowd. The seller will not recover the property that was sold, as long as both buyer and seller live. For the vision concerning the whole crowd will not be reversed. Because of their sins, not one of them will preserve their life. They have blown the trumpet, they have made all things ready, but no one will go into battle, for my wrath is on the whole crowd. Outside is the sword, inside are plague and famine. Those in the country will die by the sword, those in the city will be devoured by famine and plague. The fugitives who escape will flee to the mountains, like doves of the valleys. They will all moan, each for their own sins. Every hand will go limp, every leg will be wet with urine. They will put on sackcloth and be clothed with terror. Every face will be covered with shame, and every head will be shaved. They will throw their silver into the streets, and their gold will be treated as an unclean thing. Their silver and gold will not be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath. It will not satisfy their hunger or fill their stomachs, for it has caused them to stumble into sin. They took pride in their beautiful jewelry and used it to make their detestable idols. They made it into vile images. Therefore, I will make it an unclean thing for them. I will give their wealth as plunder to foreigners and as loot to the wicked of the earth who will defile it. I will turn my face away from the people, and robbers will desecrate the place I treasure. They will enter it and will defile it. Prepare chains, for the land is full of bloodshed and the city full of violence. And I will bring the most wicked of nations to take possession of their houses. I will put an end to the pride of the mighty, and their sanctuaries will be desecrated. When terror comes, they will seek peace in vain. Calamity upon calamity will come, and rumor upon rumor. They will go searching for a vision from the prophet. Priestly instruction in the law will cease. The counsel of the elders will come to an end. The king will mourn. The prince will be clothed with despair, and the hands of the people of the land will tremble. I will deal with them according to their conduct, and by their own standards I will judge them. Then they will know that I am the Lord. And the other scripture he's been putting on me, or one of the others, is Isaiah 24. See, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants. It will be the same for priest as for people, for the master as for his servant, for the mistress as for her servant, for the seller as for buyer, for borrower as for lender, for debtor as for creditor. The earth will be completely laid waste and totally plundered. The Lord has spoken this word. The earth dries up and withers, the world languishes and withers, the heavens languish with the earth. The earth is defiled by its people. They have disobeyed the laws, violated the statutes, and broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse consumes the earth. Its people must bear their guilt. Therefore earth's inhabitants are burned up, and very few are left. The new wine dries up, and the vine withers, and all the merrymakers groan. The joyful timbrels are stilled, the noise of the revelers has stopped, the joyful harp is silent. No longer do they drink wine with a song, the beer is bitter to its drinkers. The ruined city lies desolate, the entrance to every house is barred. In the streets they cry out for wine, all joy is turned to gloom. All joyful sounds are banished from the earth, the city is left in ruins, its gates is battered to pieces. So will it be on the earth and among the nations, as when an olive tree is beaten, or as when gleanings are left after the grape harvest. They raise their voices, they shout for joy. From the west they acclaim the Lord's majesty. Therefore in the east give glory to the Lord, exalt the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, in the islands of the sea. From the ends of the earth we hear singing, glory to the righteous one. But I said, I waste away, woe to me. The treacherous betray, with treachery the treacherous betray. Terror and pit and snare await you, people of the earth. Whoever flees at the sound of terror will fall into a pit. Whoever climbs out of the pit will be caught in a snare. The floodgates of the heavens are opened. The foundations of the earth shake. The earth is broken up. The earth is split asunder. The earth is violently shaken. The earth reels like a drunkard. It sways like a hut in the wind. So heavy upon it is the guilt of its rebellion that it falls, never to rise again. In that day the Lord will punish the powers in the heavens above and the kings on the earth below. They will be herded together like prisoners bound in a dungeon. They will be shut up in prison and punished after many days. The moon will be dismayed, the sun ashamed, for the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before its elders with great glory. I want you to know that he has provided these scriptures to me as he has been speaking to me about a time of judgment. From what I keep seeing from people, and I don't go searching for this, but in comments and things like that, is that people are all excited about something that's coming. And what God has told me is he is going to send something, and it is going to, and people are going to put it into their counterfeit Christian narrative. You know, like so many narratives about what's supposed to happen in the end days, like the pre-tribulation rapture and revival, things that are not in the Bible, what the Antichrist is supposed to look like, etc., etc. They are going to put it into their counterfeit Christian narrative. Oh, the other thing, that all this stuff that's happening, that's going to happen to quote-unquote Israel, is going to happen to an ethnic group in the Middle East. Even though the word says that not all who are descended from Israel are Israel. Israel is a combination of Gentiles and ethnic Jews who have chosen God. Israel is not comprised of an ethnic group in the Middle East. But this is the narrative. So I don't know exactly what he's going to do. I'm not even going to get into the details of what he's told me because I don't feel that he has told me to get into those details. I did get into some details with the body, but that's because they're showing up. I will tell you some things that he has said to me, that people will be thrown into confusion. They're not going to understand what's going on. As Daniel 12 says, only the wise will understand, the wicked will not. And all of that stockpiling that people have been doing with their wealth, it will be as though it never happened. And as I say that, it reminds me of the book of Haggai when he says to his people that it's time to build my temple, and you've been so concerned about your own houses and have no concern for his. And that he says, for this reason, I blew away everything that you did. I made you carry purses with holes in it. Think about this for a minute. What have you been investing in? Where have you been storing up your treasures? Because if you've been storing up your treasures in some life, in some empire, in some storeroom here on earth, he can flip the switch in a second and it can all be gone. Then what will you do? What will you have to show for it? Because you did not spend that time wisely, investing in what he was building in you rather than what you were building here in the earth, here in the world that you were told never to become part of. The other scripture that he put on me was Joshua 10, and this was actually the first scripture that he put on my heart this morning. Now Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had taken Ai and totally destroyed it, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and that the people of Gibeon had made a treaty of peace with Israel and had become their allies. He and his people were very much alarmed at this because Gibeon was an important city. Like one of the royal cities, it was larger than Ai, and all its men were good fighters. So Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, appealed to Hoham, king of Hebron, Piram, king of Jarmuth, Japhiah, king of Lachish, and Debir, king of Eglon. Come up and help me attack Gibeon, he said, because it has made peace with Joshua and the Israelites. Then the 5 kings of the Amorites, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, joined forces. They moved up with all their troops and took up positions against Gibeon and attacked it. The Gibeonites then sent word to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal, do not abandon your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us. Help us, because all the Amorite kings from the hill country have joined forces against us." So Joshua marched up from Gilgal with his entire army, including all the best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them. I've given them into your hand. Not one of them will be able to withstand you." After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel, so Joshua and the Israelites defeated them completely at Gibeon. Israel pursued them along the road, going up to Beth Horon, and cut them down all the way to Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel on the road down from Beth Horon to Azekah, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them, and more of them died from the hail than were killed by the swords of the Israelites. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "Sun, stand over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon." So the sun stood still and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as is written in the book of Jasher. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There's never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal. Now the 5 kings had fled and hidden in the cave at Makkedah. When Joshua was told that the 5 kings had been found hiding in the cave at Makkedah, he said, "Roll large rocks up to the mouth of the cave and post some men there to guard it. But don't stop. Pursue your enemies. Attack them from the rear and don't let them reach their cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand." So Joshua and the Israelites defeated them completely, but a few survivors managed to reach their fortified cities. The whole army then returned safely to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah, and no one uttered a word against the Israelites. Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me." So they brought the 5 kings out of the cave, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. When they had brought these kings to Joshua, he summoned all the men of Israel and said to the army commanders who had come with him, "Come here and put your feet on the necks of these kings." So they came forward and placed their feet on their necks. Joshua said to them, "Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Be strong and courageous. This is what the Lord will do to all the enemies you are going to fight." Then Joshua put the kings to death and exposed their bodies on 5 poles, and they were left hanging on the poles until evening. At sunset, Joshua gave the order, and they took them down from the poles and threw them into the cave where they had been hiding. At the mouth of the cave, they placed large rocks, which are there to this day. That day, Joshua took Makkedah. He put the city and its king to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it. He left no survivors, and he did to the king of Makkedah as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Makkedah and Libnah and attacked it. The Lord also gave that city and its king into Israel's hand. The city and everyone in it Joshua put to the sword. He left no survivors there, and he did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Libnah to Lachish. He took up positions against it and attacked it. The Lord gave Lachish into Israel's hands, and Joshua took it on the 2nd day. The city and everyone in it he put to the sword, just as he had done to Libnah. Meanwhile, Hiram, king of Gezer, had come up to help Lachish, but Joshua defeated him and his army until no survivors were left. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Lachish to Eglon. They took up positions against it and attacked it. They captured it that same day and put it to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it, just as they had done to Lachish. Then Joshua and all Israel with him went up from Eglon to Hebron and attacked it. They took the city and put it to the sword, together with its king, its villages, and everyone in it. They left no survivors. Just as at Eglon, they totally destroyed it and everyone in it. Then Joshua and all Israel with him turned around and attacked Debir. They took the city, its king, and its villages and put them to the sword. Everyone in it, they totally destroyed. They left no survivors. They did to Debir and its king, as they had done to Libnah and its king, and to Hebron. So Joshua subdued the whole region, including the hill country, the Negev, the western foothills, and the mountain slopes, together with all their kings. He left no survivors. He totally destroyed all who breathed, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua subdued them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and from the whole region of Goshen to Gibeon. All these kings and their lands Joshua conquered in one campaign, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal. So the thing that God is showing me in Joshua 10 is how he throws our enemies into confusion, throws his enemies into confusion. He doesn't have to do things the way that the world does things. And this, he's been speaking to me for a few weeks now, that he is going to throw them into confusion. People are going to be scrambling about because the lie that they've made their refuge will be taken from them. And so you might ask, well, God's people are still here. What's going to happen to them? Well, God's people have the seal of God, and so they're passed over. But in a situation like this, where God is bringing financial ruin, for example, that doesn't affect God's people in the same way that it affects those who have placed their trust in their finances. And you might say, well, what about the poor who are wicked? Because there are wicked people who are poor. They will scramble and grope about. And why will they do this? Because they have not trusted in him. They don't know him. The only way that you can have any kind of peace is by the Spirit of God. It was very clear during the COVID shutdowns who did not have the spirit of peace. I knew someone who was claiming to be in ministry wearing goggles, double masks, and gloves. That's how they were walking around, because that's how much they trust God and that's how much they believe in his Passover. That is ridiculous. God passed over every single Israelite and afflicted the Egyptians. You either believe that or not. And he is able to conform things according to for the good of his people. So, for example, I made the decision over the last few years to continue paying for a building that I was not allowed to use. And I'll tell you why I wasn't allowed to use it, because God was using that building in order to teach me how to care for his temple. And he didn't have anyone in that building because he told me he didn't want anyone there who was not Christian. And I could not find a single person who was. So the building remained empty, but he did not allow me to sell it. Yeah, that sounds crazy. Read the Bible. He's had people do crazy things like that many times in the Bible. He told Jeremiah to go and buy a field as Babylon was besieging Israel. Jeremiah even asked him about it. Look, this is what's going on, and yet you tell me to go buy a field? All right. Same thing for me. And so that mortgage on that building is twice the mortgage on my house. I could have lived very comfortably for the rest of the time that he has me here, but I obeyed what he said. I didn't put my concerns or my ideas above what he was telling me to do. I took my retirement and I took my life savings and I paid the mortgage on that building. And now I have no money. Did I make the wrong decision? I don't believe so. Because if I disobey God and I make decisions based on my own ideas and my own fear rather than fear of God, I know that my consequences are going to be severe, and I believe in a faithful God even though he hasn't fulfilled yet. Now, if God were to bring financial ruin, I would not be affected in the same way as if I had made other decisions. I might have that cash in my bank account right now, but then you know what I'd be concerned about once that cash was gone? That God's wrath is for me. I would know that I did not obey him. Right now, I know I can say with a clear conscience that I obeyed everything that he told me to do, even though it doesn't all make sense. So what matters? What's more important? A person who is compromising their conscience and their family and their salvation for a temporary reward, for temporary gratification of numbers in their bank account, God can sweep it away, guys. So these are the scriptures that God woke me up with today. And then a little while later, the solar eclipse was going on. And so I turned on, a live stream. And I became filled with emotion. And I just sat there and watched it and cried. Not because it was so beautiful and because of the reasons why other people had traveled to go and look at this, but because he started to remind me of the scriptures that he had been putting on me and what the sun and moon actually signify. In the book of Genesis, Joseph said to his father Jacob, or Israel, that he had had this dream in which the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to him. Now, he had 11 brothers, and his father immediately understood the dream because he responded to him, and this is from Genesis 37, verse 10. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So he's speaking respectively. Joseph says, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." Remember the order: sun, moon, stars. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers, your mother, sun, I, moon, your brothers, stars." So then we know in Revelation 12, when talking about the sun, moon, and stars, we know exactly what they're talking about. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. 12 because that includes Jacob. Remember in Genesis, it was 11 stars. Now it includes, did I say Jacob? I'm sorry, I keep getting mixed up between Jacob and Joseph. It includes Joseph. So this is the woman. This is the church, a pure and virtuous woman. When Revelation is talking about women, more than one church, he's talking about prostitute churches, counterfeit churches. But here he has a pure and virtuous woman. And this is God's church. And it says that she is clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. This is representing Rachel, the favored wife. You've been described as a wife, or the church has been described as a wife. The favored wife. Remember that Jacob, or Israel, married both Leah and Rachel, but he loved Rachel. And poor Leah was constantly, "Oh, I had this son, and maybe my husband will love me now. Oh, I've given him this many children. Maybe my husband will love me now. God has seen my misery, so I'm naming this child such and such." Rachel was the loved wife. She was the one who he really wanted, who he pursued. That church clothed with the sun, that woman clothed with the sun. So that is representing the favored wife with the moon under her feet. Remember that Jacob wrestled with God and his name was changed to Israel. So this is representing spiritual Israel, not some land in the Middle East. Spiritual Israel. Not all who are descended from Israel are Israel. Not all who are descended from Abraham are Abraham's children. And Jews a Jew is one who is one inwardly through circumcision of the heart. We're talking about the fulfilled understanding of what it means to be Israel, Abraham's children, and a Jew. When you're engrafted in the commonwealth of Israel as a Gentile, you become a spiritual Jew. So here we have the church is the favored wife, represents Israel, and she has a crown of 12 stars on her head representing the 12 tribes of Israel, who came out of Jacob's children. So as I was watching this solar eclipse, I started to have this sense of like the moon and the sun hiding their faces from the earth. And I remember the scriptures that he put on me this morning. And in Isaiah 24, how it says, "The moon will be dismayed and the sun ashamed, for the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before its elders with great glory." And it started to just really reach my heart, really pierce my heart, thinking about the moon and the sun being ashamed. This church, those grieving and lamenting the detestable things that are being done in spiritual Jerusalem, being ashamed, hiding their faces from this thing that they have been calling Christianity. This abomination that they are claiming is God's church. The moon and the sun hiding their faces from the earth. So the moon is dismayed, the sun is ashamed. Both are really, the origin words really come down to being ashamed. "For the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before its elders with great glory." And there's something important about this because in Revelation, the elders, the 24 elders represent the 12 apostles and the 2 witnesses, the 144,000 that are represented in the 12 tribes of Israel, 12,000 from each tribe. And so this mention of elders is important to me because it tells me that his elders are here watching this. I thought it was also interesting that in the book that in Joshua 10 it talked about the sun standing still over Gibeon and the moon over the valley of Ajalon until the nation avenged itself on its enemies. I will tell you that I didn't necessarily feel any meaning from this. I was have been more focused, directed to this statement in verse 10 that the Lord threw their enemies into confusion before Israel, so Joshua and the Israelites defeated them completely at Gibeon, because he's been speaking to that to me over and over for a few weeks. Now, this idea of the sun being the favored wife and the moon being representing Israel, spiritual Israel, brings new meaning to concepts like what's written in Joel 2:31 or prophesied in Joel 2:31. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. When you think about God's people being martyred, that God's people are going to be martyred before the Lord comes back. No pre-tribulation rapture, but God's people are actually going to be killed. That the moon turns to blood, spiritual Israel turning to blood, and the sun no longer shows light. And what have we been called? We've been called the light of the world. So that light has been removed. And I remember in the book of John that Jesus says, you're going to have the light a little while longer. Walk while you have the light, referring to himself. This gives totally new context to the representation of the moon and sun. So I felt moved to do this video to talk with you a little bit about these things. The ultimate reason for God's prophets telling you that judgment is coming is so that you return to him. None of God's prophets have laid out everything that God is going to do. They may have said, hey, Babylon is going to lay siege to Jerusalem, and, king is going to go into exile. Okay, so Jeremiah was saying these things, but he wasn't giving a play-by-play. And I'm going to tell you why, because I've taken this up with God and I've tried to understand why is he not moving me to tell you everything that he's told me? I'm going to tell you why right now, because you would try to plan for it. But what have I told you? What have I told you for almost 2 years now? Actually, I think 2 years now. What I have said to you is to stop storing up. Stop with these prepper videos with these counterfeit Christians and their Jesus shirts and their build this and let me read you a psalm while fear-mongering you and leading you to the work of your own hands. Stop with that. This is pagan behavior. This is the way that pagans live. You need to store up treasures in heaven and invest in the only one who can protect you, who can pass over you during this time, who will conform all of his plans for those who love him. That's my message to you. Return to him. I'm not going to tell you all of the things that he has told me because you would try to plan for it. You need to return to him. And if you return to him, you will not feel fear over wrath. You won't feel fear over wrath that's coming on you, and you won't feel fear over wrath that's coming on other people, because you will understand that God knows what he's doing, that he knows what he's doing with you, and thank God you have returned to him and you have had sense. You will not feel fear about others because you will know that God gives to each according to what they've done, and that he knows what he needs to do in order to save others. So if he needs to bring them low in order for them to be saved, you should be praying for that. You should be praying that he do whatever he knows is good. Please discern this message with God.